What kind of father stays silent while his daughter is spat on in front of him? The answer was not weakness, because the monster inside Lynn Fang had only been sleeping. Ray was just a little girl trying to play by herself near the school field. Her father sat nearby in a wheelchair, motionless, quiet, and empty-eyed. To everyone else, he looked like a broken man who no longer understood the world. To Ray, he was still the first hero she had ever known. That was why every insult cut deeper than any slap could have done. A spoiled boy marched over with his parents watching from a distance. He laughed at her father and called him dead weight in front of everyone. Ray clenched her small fist, but her body trembled with anger. She refused to let anyone speak about her father like he was garbage. The boy shoved her to the ground because he could not accept being defied. Dust scraped across her palms as laughter spread around the yard. Then he crossed the line no child should ever cross. He spat on her. For a second, the whole world seemed to stop around Ray. Her father did not move. His face showed nothing. That silence broke her more than the insult itself. But Ray forced herself back onto her feet. Her knees shook, but her eyes burned with the kind of fury children should never need. She struck back with everything a daughter could carry in her heart. The boy screamed, and his arrogant mother rushed forward at once. Instead of asking what had happened, she blamed Ray for fighting back. She called the girl ugly, wild, and ill-mannered. Then she dragged Ray up by the arm as if the child were trash. That was the moment something deep inside the wheelchair finally cracked. Lynn Fang's fingers twitched. A pulse ran through the body everyone believed was useless. The father's instincts roared louder than pain, injury, and paralysis combined. His daughter was crying. His daughter had been touched. His daughter had been humiliated while he sat there like a corpse. No sealed body could withstand that. No broken spine could suppress that. No curse could keep a god of war asleep when his child was in danger. Lynn opened his eyes. The air around him changed first. The grass bent as if a storm had entered the field. The bully's mother froze with Ray still in her grip. Then Lynn rose from the wheelchair. He stood slowly, like a mountain remembering it had legs. Every face nearby went pale. The useless husband, the crippled son-in-law, the silent vegetable had stood up. The bully's father arrived, furious that anyone had dared hurt his son. He did not ask questions either. He stepped forward and slapped Ray across the face. That slap erased the last thread of mercy in Lynn's heart. Before the man could lower his hand, Lynn seized him by the throat. The man's feet left the ground. His eyes bulged with terror. Lynn asked him for his last words in a voice colder than steel. The wife screamed and threatened him, demanding that he release her husband. Lynn turned only slightly. His palm struck her across the face before she could finish speaking. Then he asked how she wanted to pay. Nobody understood what they were seeing. They thought a disabled man had somehow recovered. They did not know they had awakened the supreme of the Southern Territory. They did not know the sealed god of war had opened his eyes again. And once Lynn Fang woke up, the world that had bullied his family would never be the same. As Ray clung to him, Lynn's mind flashed back to the battlefield that had forged him. He remembered standing alone beneath a sky choked by smoke. Around him lay broken spears, shattered shields, and countless soldiers who had dared surround him. His armor had been cracked. His body had been cut again and again. But his spear never fell from his hand. A voice once praised him, saying one man like him could inspire an army of 10,000. Then more warriors descended before him, the 7 sons of the Western Alliance. They called him worthy of his title but promised he would die that day. Lynn had only smiled through blood. He had fought for 6 long years without retreat. He had no reason to fear 7 proud names wearing polished armor. Their leader charged first, blade flashing in the smoke. Lynn slipped past the strike like a shadow sliding under a door. Another spear handle struck his ribs, but he did not even stagger. He twisted his weapon and hurled one enemy aside with brutal force. The leader lunged from behind, believing he had found the final opening. Lynn's spear pierced him before the man finished breathing. Crimson spilled from the leader's mouth as disbelief filled his eyes. Lynn told him he was too weak. Even an army of 10,000 could not push him back one step. The remaining warriors rushed in together. Their weapons came from 3 directions. Lynn's spear became a line of silver death. Each cut landed before his enemies even understood where the attack had begun. They realized the truth only at the end. The battle had never been equal. When the dust settled, Lynn stood alone again. He had believed that if he brought peace to the country, peace would reach his home. But wars take more than blood from a man. They take time. They take tenderness. They take the right to be present when a child needs her father. Back in the schoolyard, Ray's voice pulled him from memory. She wrapped both arms around his legs and cried his name. Joy pierced Lynn's chest so sharply it almost felt like pain. He bent down and held his daughter close. Ray stared at him as if fairy tales had suddenly become real. Lynn promised her that nobody would hurt their family again. Then he turned toward the terrified bullies and their parents. He told them to bow 100 times if they wanted their family to survive. The proud couple dropped to their knees so quickly that their arrogance shattered on the ground. They bowed again and again, apologizing between shaking breaths. Ray cried that everyone hated her father. She said nobody believed her when she called him a hero. Lynn stroked her hair and listened without interrupting. The world could forget him. His enemies could erase his name. But his daughter had remembered. That was enough to make him rise. Still, he noticed her body was weaker than it should have been. The worry in his eyes returned at once. Ray sensed it and asked him to put her down. He obeyed gently, pretending not to show how badly his own body still hurt. Then she told him something that darkened his face. Her grandmother had thrown them out and forbidden them from bringing him back home. Her mother was being pushed toward another man. The name attached to that pressure was Son. Ray leaned close and whispered that Lynn should pretend to be asleep again. The little girl had understood more than any adult gave her credit for. Lynn smiled softly and agreed. He returned to the wheelchair, closing his eyes as if the god of war had never awakened. Ray pushed him home with a plan already forming in her small heart. At the Zhang family house, the first voice to greet them was not warm. Shin's mother stood in the hallway with disgust written across her face. She scolded Ray for bringing Lynn back without permission. Ray hid behind the wheelchair but still defended her father. The old woman pointed at Lynn and screamed that Ray should never call that thing her father. Ray's voice shook, but she refused. He was her father, and nobody could take that word away. Before the argument could grow worse, a tall man stepped out of the house. He spoke smoothly, saying it would be an honor to spend his life with Shin. Ray whispered that this was the man her mother had been forced to meet. Lynn's expression did not change, but the air around him grew colder. Shin appeared soon after, beautiful, exhausted, and visibly trapped. She told Sun that she needed more time to think about his proposal. Sun smiled as if her answer did not matter. He looked at Ray and recognized her as Shin's daughter. Then he touched the girl's cheek with fake affection. Lynn's fingers tightened on the wheelchair armrest. Shin's mother urged her daughter to walk Sun to the door. Shin refused. Ray whispered again that this man was trying to steal their mother. Then Shin came to her daughter and held her tiny hands with real tenderness. She thanked Ray for taking care of her father that day. Ray burst into tears and asked if her mother was really searching for a new father. Shin promised that nobody would ever replace Lynn. But while wiping Ray's tears, she noticed the mark on the child's face. Ray lied because she did not want to hurt her mother further. Shin took Lynn and Ray back inside, unaware that her husband was awake. That night, Ray was sent to her room while Shin faced Lynn alone. She sat before his wheelchair, speaking to the man she thought could not hear. She said he had saved Ray by sacrificing himself. She said their daughter deserved a strong family and a safe future. Then her voice broke. She admitted she might marry Sun if that was the only way to protect Ray. Every word cut into Lynn like a blade. He wanted to stand. He wanted to tell her he was there. But revealing himself too soon would expose his family to enemies he had not measured yet. Shin apologized to him with tears in her eyes. She still loved him, and that made the decision even crueler. When she left, Lynn remained motionless in the dim room. He finally understood how much his wife had endured while he slept. Then another voice came from the bathroom. Jang, Shin's younger sister, stepped out casually as if the room belonged to her. She mocked the silent husband for not knowing his wife was being married off. Lynn stayed still, but his mind sharpened. Jang grabbed his chin and sighed that such a handsome man was going to waste. The call interrupted her. It was Sun. She answered with lazy confidence, telling him Shin had not accepted the gifts yet. Sun promised to buy her whatever she wanted if she helped him. Jang agreed instantly. Bags, shoes, and easy money mattered more to her than her sister's pain. When she left, Lynn sat alone again, processing every betrayal in the room. Then a figure appeared at the open window. A young woman bowed and said she was glad her master had finally awakened. Her name was King. She was Lynn's loyal subordinate from the southern border. Lynn asked why she was not guarding the border. King answered that her master now mattered more than any wall. She reported that for 2 years, vultures had circled his family. Many men had tried to take his wife. Many forces had waited for him to remain helpless forever. Without his orders, she could not eliminate them. Now she asked permission to cut every villain down. Lynn's anger barely stayed behind his eyes. He ordered her to gather everything about Sun first. King accepted without hesitation. Then she vanished through the window as silently as she had arrived. The next test came from Ray herself. She ran into the room with bright eyes and a fairy tale in her hands. She told her mother that a prince had kissed Sleeping Beauty awake. Then she insisted that if Shin kissed Lynn, he would wake up too. Shin tried to explain that fairy tales were not real. Ray insisted harder because she knew her father was already awake. Lynn remained still while his daughter begged with all her heart. Shin leaned down with trembling hope. She kissed him softly, pouring years of love and exhaustion into one desperate moment. Ray peeked through her fingers, waiting for a miracle. Nothing happened. Lynn did not move. Shin turned away with heartbreak on her face and said Daddy had not awakened. Ray could not understand why he would hide the truth from her mother. When Shin promised to find someone who could take care of them, Ray exploded. She called her mother a liar. She clutched Lynn's hand and begged him to wake up. Inside, Lynn fought the urge to move. Every sob from Ray tore through him. But if he revealed himself now, his hidden enemies would move before he was ready. Shin carried Ray out while the child screamed that both her parents were lying. That night, Ray fell asleep with tears still on her cheeks. Shin sat beside her, drowning in guilt. Jang appeared again and reminded her sister about Sun's banquet. Shin did not want to go. Jang dragged her toward it anyway, saying Ray would gain everything after the marriage. The lie sounded sweet enough for a desperate mother to follow. While the sisters left, King returned through the window with an envelope. She reported that Sun was hosting a birthday banquet at the Chianghao Hotel. Shin would arrive there soon. Lin opened the documents. The more he read, the colder his face became. Sun's family had used money, threats, and poison to corner the women they desired. Lin stood from the wheelchair. He ordered King to prepare. The birthday party would not belong to Sun for long. At the hotel, decorations glittered like stolen gold. Jang was dazzled by the lights, the arch, and the attention. Shin looked uneasy from the moment she entered. Sun knelt before her with a diamond ring. The staff whispered about his wealth and the hotel he claimed to have rented. Sun promised to protect Shin and her daughter, but his eyes held ownership, not love. Shin's soul split between disgust and fear. Nearby, Lin sat beside the piano with King watching in silence. King asked if she should remove the arrogant man immediately. Lin told her to wait. He wanted to see what choice Shin would make when cornered. Shin pulled her hand back. She said the proposal was too sudden, and that she worried about Lin. Jang panicked and told her to accept. Sun's smile cracked. He reproached Shin for being ungrateful after all he had done. Then his voice turned ugly. He threatened her family if she refused to obey. He announced that today would become her wedding day whether she liked it or not. Guests cheered because wealth can make cowards applaud anything. Lin had heard enough. He told King she knew what to do. In the blink of an eye, she was behind Sun. She seized his wrist and ordered him to stop. Sun thought she was jealous. He stroked King's cheek and asked if she wanted to be hugged too. The guards laughed. King slapped him so hard his glasses shattered. The hall fell silent. Sun clutched his cheek, stunned that anyone had dared touch him. Then he ordered his guards to finish her. They charged with the confidence of men who had only beaten the weak. King raised one hand. The first attacker flew across the floor. 3 more fell before the guest finished gasping. Sun shouted that this was his family's territory. King replied that sons of influential families should learn modesty. Then a melody filled the hall. Everyone turned toward the stage. Lin was at the piano. His fingers moved across the keys with calm precision. The music was soft, elegant, and devastatingly familiar to Shin. Jang stared at him and shouted that he was handsome. King recognized him at once as her master. Sun raged because another man had entered what he believed was his private kingdom. He called the manager and ordered security to throw King out, but the guards grabbed Sun instead. Sun screamed his own name as if it were a royal command. The manager smiled coldly and explained that the entire hotel had been rented by Lin. Sun's arrogance collapsed into panic. His men were dragged out with him. The manager banned the entire Sun family from ever entering again. Then fireworks bloomed outside. The night sky burned with a birthday message written in light. Everyone praised the unknown man named Lin. Shin's heart shook. She needed to know if the pianist was her husband. She ran toward the stage, but by the time she reached it, the piano was empty. Jang told her the man had already gone home. Shin believed her. If he was home, she had to return to. Lin had already slipped back into his room and changed into his old clothes. He hated lying to Shin, but the mask still protected her. When she entered, she ignored her mother's questions about the banquet. Jang bragged that a rich man named Lin had rented the entire hotel for Shin. Their mother immediately decided a wealthier man was better than Sun. Shin opened the door to her room with hope trembling in her chest. Lin sat motionless in the wheelchair. Her confidence crumbled. She had been sure she saw him. Now it felt like grief had tricked her. She remembered how her family had once tried to force her to marry Sun. She remembered the night her grandfather had introduced her to Lin instead. She remembered their marriage. She remembered Ray being born like a small light in a bitter world. Then Ray fell ill. The child needed a bone marrow transplant. Lin saved her and paid with his body. Shin knelt before him and begged him to come back. Lynn looked at her silently, promising inside that she would not wait much longer. But Jang still watched with cold eyes. She mocked the vegetable who depended on everyone. Then Sung called her again with a new plan. He promised he could make the mysterious wealthy Lin belong to Jang if she helped him. Jang believed the lie immediately. She dragged Shin toward a bar that night. Before leaving, she leaned toward Lin and whispered that after today, Shin would divorce him. King appeared the moment Jang left. She had discovered the Zhang family's financial crisis. Sun's family had promised rescue only if Shin married him. Lin watched Shin's carriage disappear. He ordered King to monitor her movements. At the bar, Sun acted cheerful and harmless. He apologized to Shin, bowing as if regret had finally reached him. Shin knew her family still depended on his money, so she endured the conversation. Sun poured wine and dropped a pill inside when her attention shifted. He offered it as an apology. Shin refused because she was driving. Jang pressured her to drink just a little to prove forgiveness. Trusting her own sister more than she should have, Shin accepted the glass. Sun's smile turned hungry. Soon Shin felt dizzy. She tried to leave, but Sun caught her before she could stand properly. People in the bar smiled and looked away. Jang saw everything and still did nothing. King reported that Shin had been taken. Lin's fury turned the room cold. He ordered the hotel located immediately. Sun dragged Shin into a private room at the Grand Milky Way Hotel. She fought through the drug, confused and frightened. He told her she had drunk too much and knew what they were there to do. She pushed him away. He grabbed her hair and threatened her. When he strangled her, Shin could only think of her husband. Then the door opened. Lin stood there. Sun shouted that he had entered the wrong room. Lin promised that if Sun touched her again, his entire family would enter the cemetery. Sun received the first punch before his brain caught up. He crashed to the floor with a swelling eye and blood on his lip. He stared at Lin, unable to understand how a wheelchair-bound man had arrived here. Then he convinced himself Shin and Lin had conspired against him. That foolish thought only made Lin angrier. Sun threatened to harm Shin and Ray if Lin touched him again. Lin asked what nonsense he was talking about. He caught the hand Sun had used on Shin and began twisting. Sun screamed that his family would never let this go. Lin answered with another blow. The heir fell to his knees. Lin told him his family name meant nothing. When Sun kept speaking, Lin stepped on the part he treasured most. The scream that followed emptied the room of arrogance. Shin, barely conscious, feared her husband would go to prison for murder. Sun tried to use that fear to regain confidence. Lin looked down and said Sun was not a person in his eyes. Then he left him alive for only one reason. Sun still had a use. Lin wrapped his jacket around Shin and lifted her into his arms. She opened her eyes and saw him clearly. For a moment, she thought it had to be a dream. Lin promised it was not. He apologized for being late. Then he took her home and called a doctor. While Shin recovered, Lin returned to Ray's room. His daughter woke when she felt his hand near her. She saw him standing and threw herself into his arms. She cried that she had been afraid he would vanish again. Lin told her he was only tired. Ray asked if he would leave in the night because he had already lied once. The question hit harder than any enemy blade. Lin admitted that his plans had changed. She could not tell anyone he had awakened, not even her mother yet. Ray promised to keep the secret. Father and daughter swore quietly under the dim lamp. At the hospital, Sun received a different kind of news. The doctors said surgery was the only way, but the risks were high. Then came the word that broke him completely. Amputation. Sun screamed through the hospital, swearing to make Lin pay. The next morning, Shin woke in her room, dizzy and frightened. Ray smiled beside her, pretending everything was normal. Shin remembered the hotel and looked toward Lin. He sat in the wheelchair again. The rescue felt like a dream collapsing in her hands. Her mother barged in, demanding to know who had drugged her daughter. Shin said Sun had put something in her wine. Her own sister denied it at once. Jang called it a misunderstanding because she could not let anyone know her role. Their mother pressured Shin to apologize to Sun for the sake of the family. Ray shouted that her mother never lied. The old woman threatened the child to stay quiet when adults were speaking. Lin's anger rose behind still eyes, but he did not expose himself. Then Sun called the house. He ordered Shin to come to his family home and apologize, or the Zhang family would vanish. Shin's mother begged her to accept. Shin had no strength left to argue. Ray called it unfair. Lin knew the time for secret punishment had arrived. He asked Ray to push him to the park so he could teach the bandits a lesson. Ray brightened because she trusted him completely. At Sun's home, his father glared at his ruined son. His mother cried and blamed everyone else. Sun insisted he had been ambushed by Shin's husband. His father promised to tear off that man's arms and legs. Then Lin appeared in the room. An oppressive aura rolled from him like a storm entering a cage. He asked how much trouble they caused to need so many guard dogs. Sun pointed and screamed that he was the one who assaulted him. Sun's father ordered his men to seize Lynn. Lynn smiled and said those men could not even stand. He moved behind the patriarch before the man could react. One strike dropped the head of the family to the floor. The mother covered her mouth the instant Lynn looked at her. Sun's father tried to threaten him from the ground. Lynn called him trash just like his son. Then he lifted him by the throat. The whole family begged at once. Lynn gave them one day to offer sincere apologies to Shin. If they revealed his awakening, they would disappear as well. The moment Lynn left, Sun's father tried to make calls for revenge, but the calls brought only disaster. Investors had withdrawn. Banks refused loans. Partners had cut ties. His company worth hundreds of millions began collapsing in a single day. Sun's father shook him and screamed that he must apologize to Shin immediately. So the proud heir kneeled outside the Zhang house with compensation in his hands. Shin did not understand why he had changed so suddenly. He begged for forgiveness and swore never to bother her again. Her mother snatched the compensation check before anyone else could move. Shin accepted only one promise. She never wanted to see Sun again. When Sun fled, he met Lin and Ray outside. He dropped to his knees again and promised to keep Lin's secret. Lin warned him one last time. If Sun spoke, his family would be destroyed. For a brief moment, Shin believed the storm had passed. But trouble waited at Ray's school. At the gate, the parents of the bully blocked Shin and demanded money. They claimed Lin had injured them, though everyone knew he was supposed to be helpless. Ray warned that she would call her father. The bully's father felt the memory of Lin's aura and ran away in fear. Before Shin could recover from that confusion, Principal Yang called her into his office. He claimed Ray's academic contract was ending far too early. Shin reminded him that she had paid the agreed amount for the first year. Yang laughed and called it only an admission advance. Then he offered two options. One was an impossible payment of 1 million. The other was something vile enough to make Shin slam both hands on his desk. Yang suggested she trade herself for her daughter's seat. Shin called him disgusting. He warned that no preparatory school in the city would accept Ray without his permission. Outside, King told Lin the school was important to Ray. Then Lin saw Shin leaving the office in tears. That was all he needed. He entered Yang's office. Inside, the bully's family had already offered money to expel Ray immediately. Yang was happy to profit from everyone's cruelty. The door slammed open. Lin appeared. The bully's parents trembled at once. Yang did not understand who had entered. He tried to use authority, but Lin warned he would cut out his tongue if he spoke again. Then Lin dealt with the bully's father and ordered the family to leave the city that day. After they fled, he sat on the couch and asked Yang to explain why he targeted his daughter. Yang still believed power would protect him. He repeated his obscene demand about Shin. Lin kicked him across the office and broke his glasses. Yang grabbed his phone, yelling that Lin would pay. Before he could call anyone, the school owner rushed in. The owner had already learned what Yang had said to Shin. He fired Yang on the spot and ordered him to apologize to the Supreme's family. Yang finally realized the vegetable he mocked had ruined him with one visit. Lin told him wealth and power could no longer be his weapons. From that day on, Yang would have no school, no position, and no home. The owner promised Ray would receive an even better education. Lin left after ordering everyone to keep his appearance secret. But the incident proved one thing. Someone above the city already knew he had awakened. Meanwhile, Zhang met Sun again in a cafe, still chasing gifts and status. Sun saw her usefulness had ended. He hired men to teach her a lesson in the street. Two thugs followed Zhang into an alley. They tore at her clothes while she begged for help. Only then did she understand that Sun had repaid her betrayal with another betrayal. King appeared and knocked both men down in seconds. She warned Zhang never again to interfere in Shin's affairs. Zhang sat shaking on the ground, finally wondering who the master behind King really was. Her guilt began to late, but at least it began. The next scheme carried a more elegant mask. Sun returned to the Jiang house and spoke of the coming Binhai celebration. Shin's mother grew excited because that banquet belonged to the highest circles. Sun claimed he could introduce a friend powerful enough to bring the sisters inside. Shin wanted nothing to do with it. Her mother grabbed her arm and told her to accept such a rare opportunity. Zhang, after her alley nightmare, no longer trusted Sun so easily. Soon the Zhang grandfather summoned Shin to the main house. There, the family patriarch spoke of invitations, status, and what the family lacked. Then he revealed the true plan. An influential man named Liu Xiao wanted Shin to accompany him. Shin stood and said she was a married woman, not a toy. Her cousin Yan mocked her husband as a vegetable. The grandfather knocked on the table and demanded obedience for the family's future. Shin refused to sell her dignity. Then Yin pushed her to the ground and threatened her husband and daughter. Shin's courage cracked under the fear of losing them. She returned home broken and took Lynn to the park. Sitting beside his wheelchair, she confessed everything. She said someone powerful wanted her, and she might be forced to attend for the family's safety. She apologized to Lynn, saying she did not want to betray him. Blue fire lit across Lynn's hands. He put Shin gently to sleep before her pain could deepen. Then he ordered King to announce his presence at the Binhai celebration. He would stop hiding. When Liu came for Shin and Jiang, King blocked him at the gate. She told him his invitation had been disqualified. Liu laughed because his family fortune stretched into billions. King slapped him hard enough to silence the courtyard. Then the celebration organizer, Wang, arrived personally. He confirmed that Liu's family had no place at the banquet. He also delivered an exclusive invitation to Shin from Mr. Lin. Everyone froze. Shin wondered if this was the same Lin who rented the hotel for her. Wang confirmed that the Lord had helped her more than once. Jiang's eyes glittered with greed at the thought of such a man. Yin snatched the invitation and claimed Shin did not deserve it. Shin wanted to keep it because she needed to confirm whether the Lord was her husband, but the family pressured her again. They said Lin was a burden, and that Shin should abandon him for the family's wealth. Shin chose to surrender the invitation if it kept the family safe. From upstairs, Lin watched in silence. King wanted to punish them immediately. Lin stopped her. He promised that one day they would regret every breath they had spent insulting Shin. Before that day arrived, Ray collapsed at school. The call struck Lin like a blade. He rushed to Binhai Central Hospital with King. Doctors said Ray's old illness had relapsed. Lin asked whether another bone marrow transplant could save her. Then Dr. Lee appeared, laughing through tears at seeing the Supreme awake. He called Ray the little princess. Lin learned the terrifying truth. 2 years earlier, Ray had awakened both the royal and imperial bloodlines. That impossible fusion had sent her into a coma. Normally, no one carried both. Only a handful of people in the world did. Lin was one of them. Another boy in the capital was another. The third was Ray. Dr. Lee promised to hide the imperial bloodline and guide her safely. Shin arrived soon after, terrified for her daughter. Dr. Lee healed Ray with acupuncture and refused payment. He said he came in the name of Mr. Lin. Ray heard her father's voice in sleep and knew she had not imagined it. Shin started to wonder whether the hidden lord and her husband were one person, but the truth still remained just out of reach. Lin ordered King to investigate Shin's father and the Zhang family's secrets. Rumors suggested her father may not have been the ordinary heir everyone claimed. Bloodlines, inheritances, and buried crimes began linking themselves together. The more Lin learned, the clearer it became. His wife's suffering had never been accidental. It had been engineered. At the Zhang company, Yan threw crisis after crisis onto Shin's desk. Partners withdrew their capital. Banks refused loans. The family house was threatened as collateral. Sun and Liu circled the finance department like flies around a wound. Sun visited Shin's office pretending to offer noble help. He told her to meet him in a hotel the next morning if she wanted the company saved. Shin realized the trap, but her mother blamed her for every collapse. With no answer from the Wang family, she arrived at the hotel. The man waiting there was not Sun. It was Wang. He handed her a check and said Mr. Lin had already handled the problem. Meanwhile, Lin confronted Liu in another room. King kicked Liu through the door before he could understand what had happened. Lin introduced himself as a soldier who had served for years at the southern border. Then he told Liu that Shin was his wife. Liu mocked the idea that a disabled husband could be the supreme. Lin released his aura, and belief stopped mattering. He lifted Liu by the collar and slammed him into the wall. The heir begged, offering any money Lin wanted. Lin broke him with a warning and left him alive only because worse enemies still waited. Then a worse message arrived. Ray had been kidnapped from the hospital. Lin's rage cracked the infirmary floor beneath his fist. Security footage showed a hospital intern carrying Ray away. King found the intern within minutes and threw him at Lin's feet. Under pressure, the kidnapper confessed. Sun had ordered him to take the girl to the Sun estate. Lin's expression went completely still. That stillness frightened King more than any shout. At Sun's house, Ray was tied to a chair. Sun blamed Shin for his ruined body and mocked the child for calling Lin a hero. He struck her forehead when she mentioned her father. Then glass shattered. Lin appeared behind him. Sun flew through the wall before he knew the blow had landed. Ray's tears stopped the instant she saw her father. Lin untied her and asked if she was ready to teach the bandit a lesson. Ray nodded bravely. Sun tried to run. Lin caught his arm and twisted until the air screamed. Ray covered her ears and complained that the bad uncle was too noisy. Blue flame appeared in Lin's hand. Sun's screams turned into weak squeaks before he collapsed. His father rushed in and begged for mercy. Lin had already shown mercy once. This time, he finished the lesson and ordered the Sun family to leave the city within a day. When the news spread through the shadows, Liu's family began investigating. Another power moved behind them. The Dragon Lord in the capital learned that Supreme Lin had truly awakened. He destroyed the Thunder God's spear as a warning. The divine weapon rejected him, burning his strange hand with red lightning. The Dragon Lord laughed and decided Lin had to be tested. That night, assassins entered the Zhang house. One dagger shattered the window near Lin. Another masked attacker threatened Shin's mother and Zhang in the dark. Though Lin disliked them, they were still Shin's family. He caught the attacker's arm and fought him in the living room. When Shin and Ray returned, the enemy vanished before they could see him. The wreckage remained. Zhang said their savior looked like the mysterious Mr. Lin from the banquet. Ray declared that her father had saved everyone. The grandmother scoffed, still calling Lin trash. King identified the dagger as a weapon of the Dragon Lord's servants. Then she reported the Binhai celebration had been moved forward. Lin understood the trap. They wanted to draw him out in public. This time, he would let them. The night of the Binhai celebration arrived under glittering lights and polished lies. Shin entered with her family, still uneasy from everything that had happened. Yin flaunted the invitation she had stolen. Liu's father accused Shin of harming Liu and threatened the Zhang family. Then Wang appeared with Lin, Ray, and King behind him. Ray waved at her mother and said father had prepared a surprise. Liu's father laughed when he saw the man in the wheelchair. He called Lin useless and mocked the crippled husband. Lin stood up. A sinister aura rolled across the banquet hall. Shin's tears fell before she could stop them. Ray smiled because her mother finally saw the truth. Yin panicked and slapped at him, asking how he dared wake up so suddenly. King answered with a clean slap of her own. Liu's father still cursed Lin as crippled trash. Lin said that in 5 minutes the Liu family would no longer exist in Binhai. Phones began ringing almost immediately. Investors withdrew. Banks closed their doors. Debt swallowed the Liu empire in real time. The proud patriarch dropped to his knees. Zhou, the royal emissary, tried to hide behind a badge from the royal family. Lin took the badge and broke it with blue light. Then King brought his military uniform. Lin dressed before the entire hall. He admitted what everyone now feared and hoped at once. He was the supreme of the Southern Territory. Shin realized the hidden benefactor had always been her husband. Dr. Li arrived and knelt before him with absolute loyalty. The guests toasted the return of the supreme. The Zhang family, Liu family, and Zhou family were expelled from the banquet. Outside, Yan swore she would steal Lin from Shin. Inside, Lin had already stopped seeing her as anything but future dust. That night, Lin returned home with Shin and Ray. The house no longer felt like a prison of silence. Shin finally confronted him, slapping him through tears because he had hidden the truth. Lin accepted the blow. He told her he had feared she might choose another man for Ray's safety. Shin said she had never wanted another man. She had only been cornered by poverty, illness, and a family that used her love as a leash. Lin held her and promised that she and Ray were the only people he had left. From that day forward, no one would harm them again. For a brief moment, the war outside disappeared. They were simply husband, wife, and daughter breathing in the same room. The next morning, Shin's relatives accused Lin of faking his supreme identity. They brought documents claiming he came from a poor village and had no real power. Lin did not bother defending himself. When they expelled Shin from the Zhang family and forced them out of the house, he smiled. He asked Ray if she wanted a home facing the sea. The little girl nodded with bright but nervous eyes. Lin called King and ordered the family move to Bixu Lake. Yin laughed because only millionaires lived there. Minutes later, King arrived with the car. At their new seaside home, Ray ran through the rooms in wonder. Shin stood still, afraid the happiness would vanish if she touched it. Lin held her face and told her it was real. Then a military call came. He had to leave for 2 or 3 days. Shin forced herself to smile, though fear flickered in her eyes. Lin kissed her forehead and left King behind to protect them. At the army office, Long Tao embraced him like a brother returned from the dead. The soldiers bowed when they learned the man before them was Supreme Lin. Long explained that the royal family had seized almost every command post during Lin's absence. 10 cities in the northwest had fallen. Messages from the White Tiger had stopped months earlier. A secret report said the northwest had collapsed and the royal family was involved. Lin understood then that Shen Yan was willing to sacrifice the country for power. While he prepared to move, the Zhang family fell apart without Shin's management. Partners abandoned them, capital vanished, and the grandfather opened an old letter for desperate times. Back home, Lin found clues that Shin's father had not died in a simple accident. Ray's necklace contained evolutionary stones tied to royal bloodline awakening. When Lin touched it, blue light erupted. Ray grabbed the stone before anyone could stop her. The light entered her body and awakened her electromagnetic power. Cutlery floated. Phones levitated. The sea itself seemed to answer her. Dr. Lee said Ray needed training to control what she had inherited. Shin hated the thought of letting her daughter go. But Ray chose to study because she wanted to protect her parents one day. She left with Dr. Lee, carrying more courage than any child should need. Then Lin went to the northwest with Long Tao and the Dragon Master Fun. They entered Yingxiao City and found frightened villagers, wounded Chinese soldiers, and silence where trust should have been. A little boy guided them to a hidden shelter after Lin offered him chocolate. Soon the sandwolves threatened to burn the village unless the soldiers were surrendered. Lin answered from the shadows. One by one, the intruders fell before they understood who was hunting them. The villagers saw a single soldier tear through a squad that had terrorized them for months. When the sandwolves sent reinforcements, Lin climbed above the rooftops and brought them down with guns, fists, and ruthless precision. Their captured female commander offered information to survive. Her name was Ying. She claimed she could lead them to Eaglehead Castle. Lin did not sneak into the castle. He drove through it like judgment. He ripped a cannon from an aircraft, kicked a shell back into enemy lines, and shattered the gate with lightning. Inside, he rescued Chinese hostages and learned Ying had saved many of them. Ying was not merely a mercenary. She was a white tiger envoy and a double agent. She had used potions, birds, and hidden curses to turn enemies into monsters. Her loyalty belonged to Bai Hu, the white tiger, one of Lin's former great generals. She accused Lin of abandoning the northwest when chaos began. The accusation struck deep because some part of him wondered if she was right. Then the trap closed. Birds swarmed the sky. Long Tao was pierced and kept fighting anyway. He declared that even if born again, he would still choose to be a Chinese soldier. Then he fell. Before Lin could grieve, a message arrived from Binhai. Shin and Ray had been kidnapped. Dr. Lee had been wounded. Wang had been murdered. The laboratory studying meteorite iron had been destroyed. Lin's rage shattered the black magic circle around him. Lightning reduced Yang to bones. He finally saw the whole design. Bai Hu had lured him west, used Yang to delay him, and struck his family while Binhai was exposed. Lin carried Long's body and blamed himself for bringing his friend into the mission. But grief could wait. His wife and daughter could not. He returned to Binhai and learned King had traced them to a research facility. Using meteorite suppression, Lin went to Shenyan, the Dragon Lord, and borrowed royal troops from the enemy he hated. Shenyan agreed because even tyrants fear losing control of the board. At the laboratory, Lin cut through former black armor soldiers who had betrayed their brothers. He found Shin and Ray unconscious inside machines. Bai Hu's puppet mocked him from the mist. Meteorite iron suppressed his power, but not his will. Lin broke through the trap, recovered his family, and took them to the hospital. When Shin woke, she hugged him as if returning from a nightmare. Ray soon entered the room, and the family held one another in exhausted relief. Lin promised that once Shenyan and Bai Hu were dealt with, they would finally live in peace. Shin believed him. Ray said her father would win. Lin left again because the war had not ended. He sent Shin and Ray to the safest training base in China. Then he returned to the northwest to break the meteorite source and confront the White Tiger. There he met Zhuan Wu, another old general carrying the staff of the Snake Tribe. Zhuan Wu said Bai Hu had turned the Black Armor Army and was hunting anyone who resisted. Together, they moved toward Sandwolf territory where Nerba was displayed as bait. Lin knew it was a trap. He still stepped forward. Zhuan Wu crashed from the sky and scattered the mercenaries. Bombs rained from the castle while hostages screamed from a stone platform. Lin ordered Zhuan Wu to save the hostages while he handled the soldiers. Sandstorms rose, hiding the enemy movements. The ground beneath Lin suddenly collapsed. An underground crusher swallowed him into the dark. Then giant birds swept down from the sky. They seized him before the stone jaws closed. Nerba had survived. She had used the last strength of her tribe to pull him back. Lin rose from the sand with dust on his coat and fire in his eyes. The White Tiger had taken his trust, his soldier, and nearly his family. Now, Lin understood the shape of the war before him. This was no longer just revenge for insults. It was a battle for his bloodline, his country, and the people he still had time to save. Behind him stood the wounded, the betrayed, and the few who still believed his name meant protection. Ahead waited Bai Hu, Shen Yan, and every hidden hand that had touched his family. Lin tightened his grip and stepped forward again. The god of war had returned. This time, he would not fall asleep, and anyone who reached for his family would learn why the world once bowed to Lynn Fang.